Thanks very much. Our table talked about trade and job creation. Mike Brown began the session by helping us understand the scale of the job creation issues and took South Africa as a case in point and said that according to analysis that he'd done, that South Africa would have to grow its economy, its GDP growth by 7% for 15 years in order to eliminate unemployment of 25 to 40%, depending on your definition, and 40 years if you included population growth. And that sort of focused the mind on the scale of the issues facing a country like South Africa. We talked quite a bit about the issues around entrepreneurship, and one of the people in our panel was from Zimbabwe and sort of relayed how he built a business from 6 people to 300 by focusing outside of Zimbabwe when the crisis really hit home, and basically was a quite inspirational example of creating jobs in the midst of regulatory crisis and governmental problems by building around neighboring countries his business. We talked also about the issues relating to capital markets and the impact of capital markets on trade and job creation, and pointed out that the equity capital markets in Africa are fairly illiquid outside of South Africa, with the next biggest exchange after South Africa's $750 billion JSE being Nigeria at $40 billion, which has fallen from 50 due to the last year's crisis around the banks and various activities. But notwithstanding the illiquid equity capital markets, the debt capital markets are quite active in funding projects, and the African Development Bank plays an important role. Commercial banks play important roles in funding these projects, and that's good. And there's also an active private equity environment in Africa with groups like ECP and Helios and Actis along the continent. We also spoke somewhat about the forces that are happening, notwithstanding the efforts of governments, in some ways despite the governments, with a lot of activity from the continent of China, India focused on Kenya, Brazil focused on the Portuguese-speaking countries like Mozambique and Angola, and the South Africans developing their business through the continent. But this idea of economic rent being things like charges around visas, tariffs being very, very high at 60%, these issues of effectively rent-seeking from trade were an effective obstacle to increasing the quantum of trade, and needs to be addressed over time. We do think the African Development Bank has an important role to play insofar as institutional capacity building is concerned, and facilitating projects, large projects. Inga Dam was mentioned earlier, and that was discussed, and the extent to which a project like that, which is one of the world's most important power projects, can get done, requires 5 different governments to cooperate, from Angola down to Botswana, Zambia, the DRC, South Africa. And so that sort of project does require intergovernmental activities, but at the end of the day will require public-private partnerships with private sector driving change. So really the underlying theme, I guess, in our trade and job creation debate was the tension between the private sector driving things notwithstanding or despite governments, with the need for governments to actually facilitate and on the margin make the difference by either decreasing the cost of doing business in the region, or proactively actually facilitating things like the Inga Dam, projects like that happen.
Doing business in Africa. You can't afford to be without Africa Investor.